everyone, Niklsun here, and welcome to Coming Soon Reviews. This is a show where every week I will be discussing a major release that has been released that week and discussing both the positives and the negatives of the film and then giving my overall rating. So without any further ado, let's get into the review of today, which is going to be on the new X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, I went and saw the movie last night, and I have to say that this movie is incredible. And I don't just mean that because of spectacle. I mean literally because of everything involved in the film. This, first off, a little bit of backstory about this movie. Bryan Singer, who directs X-Men Days of Future Past, also directed X-Men and X2. But then when Fox wanted to move ahead with X-Men 3, Bryan Singer actually went over to Warner Brothers and did a new Superman movie called Superman Returns. And his intention was always to come back and do X-Men 3 after he finished that movie. But through a couple of things that happened in the background, and a lot of these things are kind of unconfirmed, but a lot of it makes a lot of sense, is that Fox basically became kind of spiteful about the fact that they weren't, or Bryan Singer was not going to be coming back to direct it. So they set a release date for X-Men 3. They brought in a director, Matthew Vaughn, to direct the movie, who subsequently left the production. And then they had to get, they ended up getting Brett Ratner to come in at the last minute to direct the kind of uncontrolled script that was being developed. It was a whole big production issue. That's one of the reasons why X-Men 3 just wasn't very good to begin with. But this movie really allowed him to come back and make a true sequel to X2, and it really does feel like that, especially like right from the opening moments of the movie, because the intro where they have where the title card comes up and all that stuff, the music was very reminiscent of the music used in X2. The setup and everything like that was very reminiscent of Bryan's. You could feel Bryan Singer's hands on the production. You could feel his influence and his direction. You could really feel all that stuff, which I really liked. A lot of the characters felt very natural in this place, but more importantly, it was a way for, and Bryan Singer actually said this in an interview, it was a way for him to go and correct issues that had been made in the past. Now, he wasn't specifically talking about about Last Stand. He wasn't talking necessarily about Origins, or at least he didn't specify the movies that he was talking about. But once you see the movie, you will definitely understand what he meant by that. And he exceeds so well with this. It is an unbelievable story. For those of you who don't know the story, the movie basically takes place in two different timelines. It takes place in the future, in the year 2023, after a big Sentinel war has happened against mutants. But the problem with the Sentinels was their original intention was that they could track the mutant gene in a person. They could actually identify the mutant gene and target that person. But then what they started to do was they started to actually identify the mutant gene that would be passed on. Not necessarily that that person would have, but that their children or their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren. So the Sentinels actually started to attack everybody. And eventually it became an all-out world war where almost all of humanity and mutant kind were both exterminated. So the whole purpose of this is Professor Xavier and his group of X-Men in the future decide to send Wolverine back in time before the Sentinels were actually created to stop this uprising from happening. So that's the general idea. And Wolverine actually gets sent back to 1973, and he interacts with the younger Professor X, the younger Magneto, Mystique, and Beast from the X-Men First Class series. So it's a merger of the two most successful series or sections of this series, and it was just unbelievable. Like, the characters were handled so much better than I originally thought. Even those who we don't really even get to know all that well, like some of the mutants in the future, like we get Warpath and Sunspot, we really don't get to know those characters all that well, but they do get moments to shine. Like, they're not just kind of window dressing. They are there for people to really get a sense of the different powers that these mutants have. One thing that I really took away from it, I was very surprised at how brutal the movie was. There's a lot of brutal violence in the movie, and the way they're able to get away with that is because a lot of it happens when certain mutants are using their powers. So you don't necessarily get blood or gore or anything like that, but if they hadn't been using their powers, it would have been very violent. So I really loved that. The one thing that I thought was absolutely the best, and this has been kind of going around with everyone who's seen the movie, Quicksilver. Holy crap, did he not change my mind? Oh my god. The costume is still kind of ridiculous, but when you see it in the movie, it makes a little bit more sense. But his sequence is by far the most exhilarating in the entire movie. It actually reminded me of the Nightcrawler sequence in X2. It was the one sequence where you're just floored by it. It's the one you remember the most out of the movie. And it's incredible. I can't wait for them to bring him back because he is coming back for X-Men Apocalypse. It's not really a spoiler for the movie. So he is going to be coming back for the next movie, X-Men Apocalypse, which is very, very good because he's incredible in the movie. The technology they use to create him is just unbelievable. When you watch it, you'll understand what I mean. It's just great. And I also love the little nod. They don't actually come right out and say it, but they do a little nod about the fact that Magneto could potentially be Quicksilver's father, because in the comic books, Magneto is the father of both Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. So I thought that that was a really nice little nod. It's just, the movie's just got some of the best cameos ever. Those are pretty much all of my positives. Like the whole movie in general is just exhilarating. It's exciting. It's well written. It's very well acted. The character manifestations between Mystique, like how they use Mystique, is very good. You know, the growing relationship and frenemy relationship between Magneto and Xavier is really touched upon in this film. I really did appreciate how they handled that kind of stuff. My only negative about the film would have been that Peter Dinklage was underused. He plays Bolivar Trask, who is the human who is responsible for creating the Sentinels, and I felt that his character was just very underdeveloped. You know, there's one scene in the movie where you kind of get a better essence of what his character is about and his motivations behind what he's doing, but overall, I didn't feel, I felt the Sentinels were a more imposing villain than he actually was. And I don't understand the reasoning for getting someone like Peter Dinklage outside of just stunt casting. There was nothing about this character where you would have seen his acting chops shine. It was just, he's the guy from Game of Thrones, let's get him in. I was very excited to see someone like Peter Dinklage taking on a role like this, but he was just very underused. And so that, out of the entire film, that's the only thing that I could find that I felt would be considered a negative. So, I mean, with that, my overall score, I'll get to my overall score. My overall score for this movie is 10 out of 10. It was by far the best X-Men film that has come out. In my personal opinion, it far exceeds X-Men and X2. It brings that trilogy around full circle. One thing I would actually recommend for people to do, if you want to get back into the swing of things in terms of the X-Men universe, or if you haven't even seen the X-Men movies, watch X-Men, then X2, then watch X-Men First Class, then watch X-Men Days of Future Past, and you will have a complete, cohesive trilogy. There are little snippets in the movie that deal with the events of X-Men Origins, as well as X-Men The Last Stand. So there are little snippets of footage, but in overall sense, you can watch X-Men X2 and then watch First Class to get an essence of how they are younger, and then watching X-Men Days of Future Past, and it will be a complete, cohesive storyline. It is just, I was very, very impressed by it. It actually exceeded my expectations, and holy God, does it have the absolute best after-credit sequence imaginable. A lot of people may not get what is actually being shown on screen. For those of you who do know, your anticipation just builds up that much more about what they're going to be doing for the next film. So again, my overall score is 10 out of 10. I absolutely love this movie, cannot recommend it enough, and it is by far now my favorite movie of 2014. It exceeded what they were able to do in Captain America: Winter Soldier. You know, just by and large, it's the most entertaining, enjoyable, and well-constructed movie of 2014. So that's my review of Godzilla. I hope everyone gets a chance to, or my review of X-Men Days of Future Past. I hope everyone gets to go out and see it this weekend. If not, go out and see it in theaters. It definitely deserves to be seen on a big screen with the sound, with just the visual spectacle of the movie. Everything about it is just fantastic. Definitely go and check it out in theaters. So this has been Coming Soon Reviews. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching. I will be coming back next week for a review of Million Ways to Die in the West. And don't forget to check back later on today for my Coming Soon movie news episode, where we'll be discussing certain movie topics that have come out, as well as user-submitted questions. So without any further ado, this has been Niklsun. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have been great, and you enjoy the rest of your day. You take care.